In this episode, we're going to talk about how there's no such thing as being able to actually multitask. Stay tuned. Welcome to another episode of The Same Page. We are your hosts. I am Lenard. This is my lovely wife.
Sarah.
And in this episode, we're going to talk about how this like a myth that we call multitasking, how it actually doesn't really exist.
Right. So what do you mean by that?
It means that what I mean by that is the fact that a lot of times you'll hear people saying that, oh, I was able to multitask and do 2 or 3 different tasks efficiently at the same time, when it's quite the opposite. A lot of times when you're doing different tasks, your focus is spread out on those different tasks, and as a result, you're not as efficient as you want, as you think you are, or as you should be.
Right. I definitely agree. I'm listening to not a podcast, a book right now.
Mm-hmm.
You're listening to it too, and I'm like the name is actually escaping me.
Limitless,
yes. By
Jimmy Quick or James Quick.
James Quick. Okay. Yes, he does talk about multitasking in there, and I think what's happening is that when we say we're multitasking, that means we're doing different things. It seems like at the same time, but there's typically one after the other and just going back and forth. Mm-hmm. So for example, if you're typing an email and then you're also maybe watching a YouTube video, and then maybe you're also replying to a text message, you're not literally doing all these things at the same time.
Yeah.
You're doing a little bit of each, one after the other. So maybe you're writing, "Hi, Lenard, how are you?" And then the YouTube video catches your attention. You switch your focus to the YouTube video, mm-hmm. and then you hear a ping on your phone. So you stop watching the YouTube video and you reply to that person. And then you're like, "Oh, yes, I was writing this email." And then you go back to the email. Mm-hmm. So yes, you're doing all 3, but you're literally not doing them at the same time.
Exactly. And
the issue that I feel like with this is that once you write, and once you're doing an activity, you sort of have a momentum, right? You have a thought, you're about to write this email, and then you lose that thought process, you lose that thought to jump into another activity. And when you come back to the first activity, you lost that momentum. You have to rethink about the thought that mm-hmm. the idea that you were writing. So you're actually losing time, and which means that you're not being very efficient.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes.
So when people say that they're multitasking, I say that you're doing multiple things in a mediocre way
yeah.
at the same time. And it's probably taking you longer to do each and every one of these things.
Separately.
Exactly.
And there's 2 things that at least come to my mind when it comes to this topic. So first of all, the key thing when it comes to doing a task effectively, and also being efficient while you're doing it, is to stay focused.
Right.
And by being focused on one task, then it allows you to see it from start to finish. And the next thing, on top of staying on that particular task, is to avoid all other distractions. Mm-hmm. So distractions tend to appear in many different ways, whether it's a screaming baby, whether it's your phone going off, whether it's noises from your neighbor or whatnot. So there's a lot of things that can happen to distract you. So it's your job to put yourself in an environment that you can almost control those distractions and limit them as much as possible. And these days, the main distraction for most people are their smartphones.
Right.
So if you really want to be efficient and effective at the task that you're doing right now, I would suggest putting your phone on silent or vibrate, and then really focus on the task at hand.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna talk about something that the book talks about, and mm-hmm. I was actually quite surprised. When you are multitasking, when you're training your brain to pay attention to all these little distractions, that's what your brain is used to doing, mm-hmm. right? So your brain can no longer focus on that thing for on anything for a long period of time. Your brain is used to shifting the attention every 2 or 3 minutes, or sometimes it's even 30 seconds to something else. So now you're training yourself to be distracted. And I actually found myself doing that where I go to write an email and there's no pings, there's no YouTube, there's nothing else going on, but I'm looking for a distraction after a minute because I'm like, oh wait, my brain is used to being distracted by something else. So now what I do try to do is actually stay focused, force myself not to go on to something else, but to finish that email before moving on to something else, to retrain my brain to focus for longer periods of time. And I think we all suffer from that. I don't care who you are, unless you are aware of it and consciously make the effort to really focus on something, decrease your distractions. We all have, a million things going on at once, and a phone call, a text message, a YouTube video, a notification that's popping up that we want to pay attention to immediately. But really, we should just ignore these, or at least do our best to not have them pop up so that we can focus on one thing at a time.
Another thing that we want to bring up is the timeline, or how long that you're spending on each task. So you want to make sure that you give yourself some time, but then you also know that you won't be able to reach this like your maximum capabilities if you stay on a task for too long. So you want to be able to give yourself maybe like between half an hour, 45 minutes to do a particular task, and then take a break. And then if you're not done, then you end up going back. So you get a chance to relax a little bit, to kind of like give your brain a rest, and then you reapply yourself to that same task. Yeah,
absolutely. Well said. So let us know, are you guys practicing, being distracted and multitasking, quote unquote, or are you really being aware of all these distractions and making a conscious effort to focus on one thing at a time? And we would suggest that you do the latter, that you really focus on one thing before moving on to another. Just start a little at a time, try 5 minutes on one task and then increase it to 6, 7, because I feel like sometimes now for some people 5 minutes is even long to focus on one task. And I'm speaking, for myself when I say that, because I've noticed more of a kind of distracted brain when I try to focus on one thing at a time.
Exactly. So as always, leave a comment, subscribe, click the bell, and until next time.
Yeah, and don't forget to live your truth.